Just a couple of things I want to mention here. First of all, I wanted to thank Simon Parks for reminding us about Sunday, to go into my heart, go into a state of peace, go into a state of calm, scale that out throughout the morphogenetic field structure to sort of hold the higher frequency timeline in which to help soften the blow. Because let's face it, I'm relatively if your intuition is sort of when you can do a scalar measurement, I in my view, in my perspective, because of the energy that I was experiencing, which is sort of like vectoring in geospace, um, you can sort of how would I put this? It's sort of like having a large calculator at your disposal because you are aware of so much information, which is so much data that is held within the light, which is represented by all the consciousness that is here. You're able to sort of do a scalar measurement on the density of the consciousness that people are experiencing and how many beings that represent the collective sum of all that consciousness, which is the collective sum of its parts that are running different frequencies of different states of consciousness. I would say that the vast majority of the people that live in the United States of America had pretty much had awoken to at least a state in which they acknowledge that the federal and the state and the local governments that they were giving lip service to were the very beings that were holding them captive and feeding off their light and draining their electricity, in which they were experiencing so much chaos, so much pain, so much suffering, so much corruption, so much violence, so much disharmony. It was a result of the people that were occupying positions of power within their power structure, which is hierarchical. I think enough people woke up to realize that the governmental system, the government itself, all the positions of government that are represented by the elected people and appointed people that represent those policy and decision makers are in fact your enemy and never were Americans and never were your friends because they're alien predators. That's who they are. They're predators. They're parasites. They feed off humanity's electrons. Okay? I think enough people woke up to realize that the entire governmental system had been infested by demons. Okay? And so Trump represented the light at the end of the tunnel, which means you can see the light in the mirror of who you are, and you saw that light in him. The dark understood that. The dark understood that if Trump was to get 4 more years, which was why I would say that more people voted for President Trump in every state than they did to vote for a demon. Because how anybody who's still got any intelligence and rational thinking left inside their mind to not realize what Joe Biden actually represented, how anybody could not know that is beyond me. But I do understand how that's possible when I understand how parasitic artificial intelligence holds the minds captive, in which it's experiencing such low frequency energy, which means it's running on a low bulb, which means they're simply not aware of it. So I believe there are more aware beings, which means there are more brighter bulbs, people who are more aware, which means they're running on more electrons. And because of that, they're aware of more light, which realizes that Trump represents more light, because they realize he's actually doing things that are on behalf of the American people, rather than selling the American people out to the highest bidder, in which they become energy slaves now to a parasitic system, which is nothing more than a cybernetic cybernet, in which everybody gets cyborged to become part of a hive mind collective, rather than being autonomous to be able to be free to be who you are. Utilize your creative imagination in which you become the author of your own story. Big difference. Because fifth density consciousness, we're autonomous. We're free to be who we are because everybody's in the light, which is what love is. That's what frees our mind. It also means that's the amount of juice, if you will, if you want to call it that way. But when you're running in pure light like that, nobody's worried about anybody else because there isn't anybody else that has a need to feed on anybody else's energy. So you don't need a political system, and you certainly do not need a hierarchical system. Because nobody's higher than anybody else because it's based on the speed vibration of who we are that frees us. Which means you don't need a parent. You don't need an authority figure trying to tell you how to live your life. You're living in a state of peace. When you're living in a state of peace, it means everybody is free to be who they are because they don't have to worry about using any of their energy to protect themselves against somebody that's going to burn their house down, hit them over the head with a baseball bat, steal their vehicle, burn their house down, rape their children, etc., right? Who wants to live in a world like that? Do you? Okay? So this is called a separation in the herd time. This means separating ourselves from demons. People who have absolutely no love, no compassion, and no empathy for life. Because the result of that is measured by all the data that we collected, which is measured by the purity of the air, the purity of the water, the purity of the soil, and the purity of our relationships. Are they thriving? Do we have thriving communities? I mean, here was one of the first clues that I noticed when I was a child. A gated community. You mean to tell me that they're wanting to live inside a prison? Why are they doing that to themselves? They're locking themselves out of the rest of the world. Why is that? Because they live in fear of predators that are out there. They want to make sure that they don't lose anything that they've acquired throughout their whole life and have it taken away from them or be assaulted by some predator who's going to prey on some older person who can't defend themselves against a predator. That's what a gated community represents. My God, a gated community? What are you protecting yourself against? They'll tell you, predators. Okay. You got guys running around wearing badges and guns. What do you think that message tells you? You have a reason to fear. You're surrounded by predators. Wow, really? Well, guess what? Most of them didn't realize they were protecting the worst predators. That's what kept them in power at the street level. Okay. Ask Dan Bongino. He was a New York cop. Ask Rudy Giuliani. He was the mayor of the city of New York. Who knew who ran the city of New York? The mob did. Those with guns and knives. Protection rackets. RICO. Mobs. Criminal gangs. Making money off drugs. Making money off of human trafficking. Making money off of killing people. For what? Power. Protect their money. Protect their power. Because they see everything through the lens of money, which is matter. Which means they rape and pillage the planet, which is the girl on the planet, upon which they acquire more of that energy, in which they stack it in bunkers with all the gold. And they realize with all that money, because of what it represents, by what everybody believes in their mind, is power. And because money becomes the power through which they perceive the universe that they live in, then it means the more gold that I acquire, the more power I have to protect who I am against another predator. That's a reptile community. That's why it's just as Patty said, the governments are being run by hybrids, which basically means half mammal, half reptile, half-breeds. So you begin to sort of see, how this works that way, which again goes back to the difference between high frequency, low frequency, why the energy field is distorted, why there can't seem to be harmony between everybody, because the waves are not in harmony. Walk through a community, you can feel somebody running on 200, somebody running on 100, somebody running on 400, somebody running on 800. It's all over the map. Which means there isn't hardly any peace, there isn't hardly any harmony anywhere that you go. Why is that? That's what's ending. That's why this is a separation. Because graduation in this classroom means that when you are love and service to others, which means you have learned how to be a powerful magnet, which means you're attracting more light, which means you're spinning your Merkaba at a higher rate of speed, that allows you to get through a gate and you go on. It's that simple. Okay? That means that I knew that when Timeline Zero was secured, all of the dumbs are being destroyed and taken out. And when I was told this was going to be her cleansing herself of all the parasites on the planet, then it was only a matter of time to see it, the rest of it play out. Incrementally, 6 months at a time. So I began realizing we're running out of time. We're running out of time. We're running out of time. So you could see over the summer, that I realized by the time the election time came around that events would keep accelerating even on a greater scale. Okay? So now that this has happened, this is going to accelerate the separation between higher frequency and lower frequency. So this is why I would expect over the next couple months, particularly the next 60 days, we're going to start experiencing more of the light and more of the light and more of the light. Okay? And that is going to end once and for all the fourth world. Okay? Because we're not ever returning to business as usual. Ever again. That's a decision that the Milky Way University campus makes in alignment with the girl on this planet in the Andromeda Council of 12. Okay? And those who are the universals, if you will, because these are agreements that are set up in treaties between star nations. Okay? Because there are other bigger players in all this, okay, that very much have an interest in the success that everybody has here as a result of what happened here, that is in the interest of the greater good of not just humanity, but this galaxy, Laniakea, and this universe. Okay? So in knowing that, and knowing how many beings that are out there that love us, that want to succeed, they are doing everything they can right now to make that happen. That's why I know that we already won this. Okay? So I try and remind myself to relax. The most difficult thing that's challenging for me is getting back out where she is, where her signals are stronger, so that I can have a big cry with her and get rid of all of this pain that I've been carrying around my entire life as a result of what happened to her. Okay? Because it's one of those things where it's not a liability, but every time that, how do I put it? Every time they hurt her, I feel it. Okay? And that's an enormous amount of pain that I have to get rid of. And I thought I got rid of it about 4 years ago when I cried for 4 days in a motel room. And from time to time, I still cry a lot. And I'm releasing it, which is one of the reasons why I need to sort of depart and separate myself from civilization and go deep into the wilderness somewhere to get rid of it, particularly now going forward over the next 60 to 90 days. Because whenever I'm in civilization, it's always a reminder of what happened and how it happened the way that it did. And that's one of the things I mentioned to Lori Ladd about. It is everything that is in nature here that is self-aware and has memory, okay? And particularly the native tribes and the clans that are here that experienced, it's no different than if somebody came into your house, raped all your children, destroyed everything that you loved, and then left you for dead, okay? That's what it feels like when they came in here and did what they did here to our home world. It's no different than if they came into our neighborhood and did that to our families. Except that they did this on a planetary scale. So that's very difficult and hard to release all that pain. Because for the entire time that I was here, when you have such an enormous amount of love, compassion for everything that is in nature from what happened here, okay? Even the smallest things that most people might not even think about, okay? Like when I'm camped out at a campground on the Klamath National Forest and deer season comes around, okay? And I would be there and I would think to myself in the privacy of my own thoughts, how about if I go down to a gun and I start hunting you? Okay? Because what's the difference? You're hunting something that I give love to every day and you're wanting to kill it. How about if I kill you? Okay? They don't have that kind of love for that life form that is out there to leave it alone. Okay? And love it for what it is, to express itself freely. Remember the little picture I used to put up about how you can love a flower for the presentation of a flower without having to cut it and then put it in a jar and hold it captive? Okay? Can you have an appreciation for what nature is showing us without destroying it or trying to capture it, or trying to put it in a cage or to eat it? Right? This is what makes it difficult when you come from a higher dimension, if you will, or what I call source, which means that the light is giving love to everything, and then you realize that everything that you're giving love to is being killed by somebody else. Okay? Because for me, I give love to everything that is in nature. Everything that is in nature. Okay? Which means I can't take its life in order to feed myself. I can't do that. Okay? And that's even amongst my own Indian tribes. I can't do that. They can do that, but I can't do that. Okay? I had a difficult time even when I looked at catching fish and then eating fish. There were times I used to throw up when I realized what I was actually doing. That I'm taking a fish out of the water, which means doesn't it have a right to be what it is, which is a fish, to enjoy itself without having to worry about somebody throwing a net out? How about if I allowed somebody to put a net over me and ate me? Because I didn't see anything different in that. Remember, what I do to you, I do to me. And so I looked at that across the entire electromagnetic spectrum of everything that is living in nature. So that's my own clearing that I got to do, and I've done most of it already, okay? Which is one of the reasons why some of us are going to have a little more of a difficult time trying to clear everything in a way in which we experience it the way that we did here, because this is not my normal realm, in the sense that when you realize how it works that way and what it's like to have to accommodate a matter density body because it requires food and water, is difficult for me, because I normally use my light spirit body, which means Dolores Cannon was the first one that I ever heard that really echoed what I know about myself, which was, she said that souls came in here who were not accustomed to being in a matter body, and she was absolutely right. I'm not accustomed to being in one of these things. And that made it very difficult when I was a child, when I used to get into deep discussions, when they'd say, well, you eat an animal. And I'd say, no, I don't eat meat, because I don't want to kill an animal in order to be able to provide protein for myself. And then they'd say, okay, then where do you get your food from? And I'd say, well, I eat plants. Well, plants are living and alive, aren't they? What's the difference between eating a plant? Because then isn't a plant growing and alive and aware of itself? Yeah. Okay, then what's the difference between killing and eating the animal and killing a plant and eating it? So now you get into the sort of the arguments of separating the difference between everything that we give love to, which is what the light is, and then those things that we eat as a result of a body requirement in order to replenish the nutrients that it needs to power the unit. Okay? So now we get into living water, which is the living water that is provided by Mother Earth, right? And then saying, well, there are times I wish that I didn't even have to eat anything, in which I have to get rid of the waste. That would be better, wouldn't it? So now you start beginning to think about the different designs that are possible upon which you can experience this particular dimension in ways in which you're not having to do things that you're uncomfortable doing. Which is like, for example, when I walk through plants, I don't know about you, but anywhere I see little buds of flowers, I step around them. And that includes the grass that I walk on. Okay? Because you realize that's living, you're disturbing it. Well, hell, I got to get from point A to point B. It's going to be pretty difficult not to walk on the grass and disturb it. Okay? Because you want it to be free to experience what it is in the wind and the breeze and the sun. So when you begin perceiving yourself in a way in which everything that you do in movement as energy, and the relationship you have with everything else, that what it is as energy that is aware of itself, you don't want to disturb anything. You want to be able to observe the beauty and the love that you have for everything that's in nature without disturbing it in any way. That's what made it very difficult for me to be here. Why I didn't want to be here and I had to go home, because then I was going to have to reconcile these kinds of things to myself, being in this matter body that way. Okay? So I have to cleanse myself at a very deep level as a result of all the things that I know that I disturbed while I was here. It caused a loss of energy in it. This is what happens when you think of the purest light and the purest fire, if you will, upon which source is burning so hot because it doesn't want to experience anything that is disturbed or caused any loss in energy in anything, because otherwise it becomes a loss in us. Which means I'm experiencing the loss of energy in anything that's losing energy as a result of anything that I do. That's what made it the most difficult and challenging for me while I was in here. Because it's like, you don't have much choice in the matter, buddy boy. You're stuck in here for the duration. Okay, I'd be better off going to live up with the monks. Okay, and listening to Gregorian chants all day long. You know what I mean? Staying in the chants. Right? Just stay in the chants. Minimize the impact. Minimize the impact and simply chant out the most beautiful harmonic music that you can chant. You know what I'm saying? That's the most beautiful music that I know to experience in my heart, are the mystical Gregorian chants. They are soothing to the soul and to the spirit. That's what I'm returning to, in spirit, in the light. Have a great day. I love you.